I wasn't looking for anything special that day. That's important because every time I tell this story, people assume I woke up with some dramatic feeling like today my life will change. Nope. I woke up late, spilled tea on my shirt, and argued with myself about whether being 5 minutes late really counted as late. It was one of those ordinary days that blend into each other so smoothly you don't even remember the date later. I was standing in line at a small cafe near my usual route, scrolling through my phone, pretending I wasn't annoyed by how slow everything felt. The place smelled like coffee and toasted bread, and the fan above us made that tired clicking noise like it had given up on life years ago. That's when it happened. "Excuse me, is this line for ordering or just for suffering together?" I looked up. She was standing just behind me, half smiling, clearly amused with herself. Nothing dramatic, no movie-style slow motion. Just a normal person with curious eyes and a voice that sounded comfortable like we'd already spoken before. "Honestly," I said, "I think it's both." She laughed. Not the loud kind, not forced, just natural, easy. And somehow, that tiny moment cracked something open. We started talking first about the line, then about how overpriced coffee had become, then about how neither of us actually liked mornings, but still showed up for them every day like responsible adults, pretending to have things under control. I noticed small details without trying to. The way she listened, really listened, instead of waiting for her turn to speak. The way she tucked her hair back when she laughed. The way time suddenly felt different. Faster, lighter. When it was finally her turn to order, she panicked. "I had this planned in my head," she said, staring at the menu like it had personally betrayed her. "Just point randomly," I suggested. "Live dangerously." She did. Immediately regretted it. "That sounded better in my head," she said. I smiled before I realized I was smiling. We got our drinks and stood awkwardly for a second, like two people unsure whether the conversation was supposed to end or continue. I was about to say goodbye, the polite, forgettable kind, when she beat me to it. "So," she said, lifting her cup, "do you come here often, or is this a once-in-a-lifetime bad decision?" I don't know what made me answer the way I did. "Honestly, I think I might start coming more often." She nodded slowly. "Yeah," she said. "Same." We exchanged names. Simple, normal, but my brain decided to store it like important information, the kind you don't accidentally forget. As we walked out together, our paths split at the corner. She waved, took a step back, then paused. "Hey," she said, turning around, "maybe we'll run into each other again." "Maybe," I replied. Some hellos don't feel random. They feel like the beginning, even when you don't realize it yet. We didn't run into each other the very next day, or the day after that. And yet, somehow, she slipped into my life anyway. It started with a message. I was halfway through doing absolutely nothing productive when my phone buzzed. Her name popped up on the screen, and for a second I just stared at it, making sure my brain wasn't being overly hopeful. "Be honest," the message read. "Was that coffee as bad as I think it was?" I laughed out loud, alone, like a fool. "It's aging terribly in my memory," I typed back, "which means we should probably never order it again." And just like that, conversations became a thing. We talked about everything and nothing, random observations, complaints about small inconveniences, screenshots of funny things we pretended not to care too much about. Somewhere between all that, we learned real things too, favorite foods, childhood habits, the kind of music that made us feel understood without explaining why. Days turned into weeks without either of us announcing it. Sometimes we met at the cafe again, pretending it was a coincidence even though it clearly wasn't. Sometimes we didn't meet at all, and somehow those days still felt full because she existed on the other side of my screen. What surprised me most was how easy it felt. There was no pressure to impress, no carefully planned lines. If there was silence, it wasn't awkward, it was comfortable, like a pause instead of an ending. One evening, we sat on a bench outside after the cafe closed, watching the streetlights flicker on one by one. "Do you ever feel like time moves differently with certain people?" she asked. "Yeah," I said. "Like someone messed with the settings." She smiled at that. "Exactly." I wanted to say something then, something honest, something brave, but the word stayed stuck somewhere between my chest and my mouth, afraid of ruining what felt delicate. Instead, I made a joke. She laughed, and the moment passed, but somewhere along the way, I realized something quietly terrifying. I started looking forward to her messages a little too much, started checking my phone for no real reason, started noticing when hours went by without hearing from her. One day, out of nowhere, she asked, "Do you think people can like each other without meaning to?" I hesitated. Too long. "I think," I said carefully, "that's usually how it starts." She didn't reply right away. When she finally did, all she sent was a smile emoji. It shouldn't have meant anything, but it did. I always thought big moments announced themselves. Like there would be a clear sign, a dramatic argument, a loud confession, something you could point at and say, that's where it changed. I was wrong. The day everything almost fell apart was quiet. It started with shorter replies, not cold, not rude, just distant. Messages that used to come with questions now ended with periods. Laughter turned into polite reactions. I told myself I was imagining it, that people get busy, that not everything needs a meaning attached. But when you care, your mind doesn't listen to logic. A few days later, we finally met again. Same cafe, same smell of coffee, same tired fan clicking above us. Different feeling. She looked the same, but something in her eyes felt guarded, like she had already decided how much of herself to show. Sorry, I've been a bit off, she said, stirring her drink. Things have been messy. I nodded. You don't have to explain. But I wanted her to. She talked about life, responsibilities, expectations, how sometimes it felt like she was running late for a future she didn't fully understand yet. I listened, really listened, but there was a growing ache in my chest that had nothing to do with the words. At one point, she sighed and said, I don't want to lead anyone on. The sentence landed between us like something fragile. I'm not asking you to, I replied quickly, too quickly. And that was the problem, we were both careful, so careful that we stopped being honest. After that day, things didn't end, they just loosened. Conversations became occasional. Meetups turned into we should sometime. No fight, no closure, just a slow drifting apart that hurt more than a clean break would have. One night I sat alone, phone in hand, staring at our old messages. I hated myself for doing it, but I needed to understand where things changed. And that's when it hit me. I had been afraid to speak when it mattered, afraid of misreading the moment, afraid of losing her, and by staying silent, I was losing her anyway. I typed a message, deleted it, typed again. Finally, I sent it. I miss how we used to talk. And I don't know where we stand, but I needed to be honest about that. The dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Minutes felt like hours. Then her reply came. I miss it too, she wrote. I just didn't know if you felt the same, and I was scared to assume. I stared at the screen, heart racing. All this distance, all this confusion, built from two people waiting for the other to speak first. We didn't solve everything that night, but for the first time in weeks, the silence wasn't heavy anymore. It felt open, like a door left unlocked. And in that moment, I realized something important. Love doesn't fall apart loudly. Sometimes it almost disappears quietly, unless someone is brave enough to reach for it. And I was finally ready to be brave. It wasn't a grand gesture. There were no fireworks, no dramatic confessions on a rainy street, no perfectly timed serenades. In fact, the moment that changed everything felt perfectly ordinary. We met at the same little cafe again. The fan above still clicked. The smell of coffee and toasted bread was the same. Some things never really change, or maybe they just know where they belong. We sat across from each other, and for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel the weight of distance or unspoken words. I didn't feel the fear of saying too much or too little. There was only the quiet space between us, filled with familiarity. I'm glad you messaged me that night, she said, sipping her coffee. I think I needed to hear it, even if I didn't know it yet. I smiled. Funny how that works. Waiting for someone to be brave when all along we just had to be honest. And we laughed, because we both knew that honesty wasn't always easy. It was messy, awkward, and sometimes terrifying. But it was worth it. We spent the afternoon like that, talking about random things, sharing inside jokes, planning ridiculous future adventures we weren't sure we'd ever take. The future didn't feel like a threat anymore. It felt like something we could meet together, even if imperfectly. I realized then that love doesn't have to be perfect to feel real. It doesn't need flawless timing or cinematic moments. Sometimes it's simply about being there in the little ordinary moments, the coffee spills, the small jokes, the shared silences that suddenly feel meaningful. And when it finally came time to leave, I noticed that I didn't want to let go. Not because everything was perfect, nothing was, but because being with her made the world feel lighter, funnier, warmer. Somehow, ordinary felt extraordinary. As we parted, she turned and said with a grin, "Same time next week?" "Absolutely," I replied. Love doesn't need fireworks. It sneaks in quietly, in laughter and shared coffee, in moments that feel like home. Some love stories don't need perfection. They just need honesty, patience, and the courage to show up again and again.